Today, we're going to discuss a new proposal that is being discussed by the European Council, which is supposed to combat sexual child abuse, something everyone with a clear mind is obviously against too. But even though this proposal sounds very noble, it also raises concerns about privacy and surveillance. Now, to get a better understanding of this issue, I am very happy to share that with us today is Yaël Ossowski. He is the Deputy Director of the Consumer Choice Center. Yaël, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Scarlett, and surely on a very important issue.
Yes, because what is exactly, because the proposal we're talking about is also called as the chat control proposal. And yeah, what is it exactly? And more importantly, how is it impacting the life of us citizens that are using, for example, WhatsApp?
So the official name is Proposal, and I want to make sure I get this correctly, Proposal for the European Parliament and of the Council, laying down rules to prevent and combat child sexual abuse. So the term chat control, it's one that I think is a brilliant move. It was thought up by the Pirate Party and many privacy advocates in Europe who have been against this since the very beginning. There have been a number of iterations of this that have been proposed. The one that we're discussing now was introduced in 2022. And the idea would be that it would force the governments and the member states would force different providers to be able to scan any kind of uploads through their channels. Now, it sounds very general. There's a lot of technical details that are in these documents. Essentially, it would mean that any kind of service that you're using, whether it be for messaging or email, video upload, audio upload, there would have to be some kind of filter or mechanism whereby that information could be checked against a database of known child sexual exploitive material. There's not really too many nuts and bolts about exactly how that would be done, but what many encrypted messaging service providers have shown us is that there's really no way that you can do this technically without breaking the encryption algorithms that are now standard in things like WhatsApp, in Signal, in many different email services. So the goal is to try to figure out a way that the police can have the open opportunity to scan devices and things that people are sharing back and forth. But in reality, what this will do is it'll break the encryption that now too many consumers have come to rely on.
Yeah, because this encryption ensures that we have our privacy, but without it, it means that the government can see every single message that we are sending to one another on different platforms. And to be honest, I find it, and I know a lot of people find this quite scary. I remember reading George Orwell 1984, and with this, it almost seems like we are actually moving in that direction of a totalitarian state. How real are these concerns?
I think there are a lot of concerns when it just relates to our general privacy, our data privacy as citizens and individuals. There's been a lot of focus on what other people call surveillance capitalism, the idea that there are private social media networks or social media companies that are offering products for people to use, sometimes for a fee and sometimes basically for free because they have advertising. And there's been a lot of focus in the European Union specifically on these platforms. And it's been about how much information do private companies have. And private companies have, I think to their credit, now offered these additional tools and functionality. So we have end-to-end encryption on things like Messenger or WhatsApp or Signal, Threema, Proton Mail, Tutanova. There's all kinds of different services that now provide end-to-end encryption as a standard. And that has allowed people, individuals, and users to be more empowered because they know their information is not known to any of these platforms. And conversely, it's not known by any government authorities who might get warrants or anything else. Governments still have the ability to petition these platforms or apps or service providers if they can match your IP and follow you. And there are legal police procedures that can be done. What this proposal does, though, is to take away that kind of benefit that we have of the presumption of innocence and the ability to freely communicate, and would actually give more power to police agencies in member states, which I think is why so many people have risen up and why you really are seeing unprecedented democratic action around this, which normally does not happen with anything that happens in Brussels or the European Union.
So what you're saying is really interesting. Yeah, you spoke about, benefit of that you are perceived as innocence, which is taking away if you are monitoring people 24/7. This is something that we are known to see in China. Europe has always been very proud of the fact that it is a so-called democracy that respects the privacy of its citizens. So what they're doing right now goes against their own norms. And I'm also wondering, now that we're getting closer to a surveillance state, if the government can easily access and monitor our private messages, how can we ensure that our personal information and conversations are safe from misuse or falling into the wrong hands?
Yeah, and I think for right now, we're very empowered as consumers and users. So we can use a lot of these different options. If you like to use end-to-end encrypted messages, there's an entire host of applications out there for you. There's Signal, there's Threema, SimpleX, WhatsApp, Messenger, and even there are plans for Instagram, and perhaps even X will have direct messages encrypted very soon. So there's that. For email, things like Proton Mail, Tutanova, as I mentioned before, standard PGP encryption that has been around for decades. So we have the ability now, and as enlightened consumers, and we still live in a place where we have the ability to choose devices or technologies that we like, you can actually use this stuff right now. And I think that is the best way to do it, because you have to think about different types of threat matrix. Who are you really scared of? Is it data brokers? Is it the police? Is it government? Is it people who might be hackers, who might be stealing your health information? These are a lot of questions that the European Commission didn't really think about when they opened up this file and proposed this regulation, because there's a lot of stuff that is just industry standard for encryption. It's become the standard for how we carry data from point A to point B. There are hackers who are ready and willing to break into many of the systems that aren't encrypted. But I think it should be up to us as enlightened consumers to seek out those different products, all those different platforms, because we have the ability to do that now. And I think many of the companies are providing more options. We're going to see this increased need for CSAN scanning or upload modification or whatever they call it. They're pursuing this in the United States and Canada and the United Kingdom. They're going to keep trying in Europe. So a lot of people have to stay vigilant, empower themselves with the tools that exist, and then continue to speak up in the public realm in Brussels and the EU, because I do think this is very vital.
Yeah, because this is also one of the questions that we wanted to discuss is then how can people protect themselves? And you already discussed some metrics that they can use. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think really right now, we have to think about what you do in your day to day and the information that you use on your phone and your computer. I think for increasingly younger people, people are living their lives on their phones. And people can use virtual private networks, VPNs. They can use encrypted services like Mail, like I mentioned before, or messengers, and even iMessage. So a lot of people have iPhones or people might have Android. If you're using any of these different applications, these are also end-to-end encrypted. And Apple has been at the forefront of this. A lot of people like to hate some of the American tech companies, but they offer a lot of these tools as standard applications on their phones. So I think looking at virtual private networks, VPNs, there's a number of them out there. It's a very competitive industry, but this is a way that you're able to at least also encrypt your traffic when you go onto websites. And that's something that is important. And many people use it when they're traveling and they like to access their Disney Plus or their Netflix. But you can also use it to be sure when you're connecting to a public Wi-Fi network that no one's going to be snooping on your traffic. I think that is very important. We're also seeing a lot of data breaches, privacy breaches of email addresses. So every time you sign up for any kind of service, normally people use their standard email that happens to be the same email they use for their banking, for example. So that's something that people should stop doing. We should start using individual emails for those important services, because the second that there's a database leak, people can see it's this email. Many people reuse their passwords and they're able to get into these systems, take money out, withdraw it, whether it be a Bitcoin exchange or something else. So I think using different emails and also using password generators, this is also very huge. This is something that many people have really neglected. But again, there are many applications and phones that now by default will create these new passwords for you. So I think these are just kind of the tools that already exist. They're already out there. They're legal. People should be using them a lot more. It's a way that people can protect themselves, and we don't necessarily need to have more government rules and regulations to do it. And at the same time, the police are able to use their legal methods in order to obtain information, get warrants, speak to judges, so we can also have our rights protected when we're using these services online.
So I think this is a very clear call to action for the people watching at home to better protect your own data, making sure you use strong generated passwords and don't always use the same email, something I am guilty of myself as well. So I will definitely take this lesson with me. Yeah, thank you so much for your time and sharing all your knowledge with us. And of course, thank you for lovely viewers for watching at home.